Well, thank y'all for coming out today for our proposal to outline our school safety initiative. I want to introduce a couple people behind me. I think everyone here knows Senator Tollison, our chairman of our Education Committee in the Senate, Senator Hobson, our chairman of Judiciary A in the Senate, and also I want to introduce Tara Mitchell, who is the regional representative for the NRA, and I appreciate her joining us here today. Those of us in Mississippi know better than most, in lieu of the fact that the first school shooting incident was in Pearl, not very far from this capital. But as we saw what transpired in December in Newtown, Connecticut, I think I speak for all of my fellow Mississippians and really people all across our country at the absolute shock at what was going on. As someone who has 3 daughters, it hit especially home for me, and we started looking immediately at ways in which we as a state could ensure that we mitigate and minimize the risk that something like that happened in Newtown could happen in our state. I know there are folks all across Mississippi that woke up on Christmas morning and were very pleased to be with their families, with their parents and their grandparents, and with their kids, that couldn't help but think about those unfortunate parents in Newtown that did not have that opportunity this Christmas. Today's proposal, which I hope will receive widespread support across the state of Mississippi, is going to begin with 2 initiatives going through the 2 committees that are represented here. First, we propose a $7.5 million matching grant program to put law enforcement officers in our schools. I want to point out that we want to ensure that these are trained law enforcement officers, so we would require that they have gone through the Mississippi Law Enforcement Officers Training Academy, which already uses the nationally recognized ALERT program, that is the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Program. It's used by the state of Alabama, Texas, Virginia, as well as NYPD. We want to ensure that we have trained, certified law enforcement officers assigned to schools, and we would require that those officers take that course. What our program would allow for is a matching grant up to $10,000 per school for any school district that wanted to put a trained law enforcement officer in their school. Obviously, the $7.5 million proposal would provide up to 750 grants. That, by the way, just to put things in perspective, we have approximately 1,050 campuses across the state of Mississippi. The $7.5 million is a somewhat arbitrary number in that my personal view is that in year 1, we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't see demand reach the level to require the entire, where every campus took advantage of it. But in the event that the demand is greater than that $7.5 million, I do want to tell you that I believe that the legislature would come back next legislative session and provide for the monies to ensure that these monies were made available, to ensure that every school that wants to participate in the program, that we have sufficient resources to do so. The second piece of this morning's proposal, which I think is also important, is an enhanced safety check requirement in our state. Currently, federal law prohibits the sale of firearms and ammunition to certain individuals with a history of mental illness and requires licensed dealers to request a background check prior to sale. But federal law does not require states to make the necessary mental health information available to the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System, called NICS. Mississippi is one of a number of states that does not mandate that reporting requirement of our courts. So the second piece of this proposal this morning would be legislation that would require the courts to report to NICS the mental health information as stated in federal law. That information is such as commitments made by a court, being found mentally incompetent by a court, or pleading or being found guilty of a crime by reason of insanity. We want to mandate that our courts in Mississippi provide that information to NICS such that when licensed dealers do the background check, that information is available to them. This requirement is already made in states such as Texas, Alabama, and Georgia. We think this is an additional step that will help make our kids safe and safer in our schools.